Carmen. I don't see any of our staff. Oh no, there she is, Carson.
Jessica says, I was invited by my botany professor. Thank you for letting me join. We're so glad you're here, Jessica. Who's your botany professor? I don't know. Oh, yeah, Diane Doss is her botany professor. Great. All right, I think it's 7. So we have 32 people here. So my name is Fela Schwartz, and I'm the chair of the Olympic Peninsula chapter of the Washington Native Plant Society. And I just want to welcome everybody here. We, in the past, have always done these presentations in person at the Port Townsend Community Center. And because of the pandemic, we're trying a new method now. We're trying these Zoom presentations, which has an advantage of getting people to attend that couldn't otherwise drive into Port Townsend and come to an evening presentation. So in that way, we hope you enjoy it. Not as much personal interaction with other attendees, but hopefully you will enjoy this great presentation. So before I have Dan introduce our speakers, I just want to let you know that we will have another program on the 3rd Tuesday of November. That's November 17th. Fred Weinman, who has been involved in the Olympic Peninsula chapter and in the State Native Plant Society for many, many years, is going to be talking about carnivorous plants. And Fred is a great speaker. I think you'll enjoy it. So just remember that if you want to come to that, you have to register ahead of time on the WNPS.org website. We will also be having some kind of program for Olympic Peninsula chapter members in December on the 3rd Tuesday, and we'll have more information coming to you about that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dan Post, who knows our presenters and much better than I do, and he's going to introduce them for you tonight. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Fela. I'm the treasurer of the Olympic Peninsula chapter, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Kelly and Sue, my good friends, who I've been working with, volunteering at their nursery for almost 15 years now. Kelly and Sue have spent their lives learning and working with plants in nurseries, botanic gardens, and plant hunting expeditions. They're the owners of Forages Farm, which unfortunately you cannot visit right now because of the pandemic, but they're still selling plants mail order. The nursery has been featured in Pacific Horticulture Magazine, Garden Gate, Martha Stewart Living, and they are also contributing editors to the Fine Gardening magazine. They are also directors of the Forages Botanical Conservancy, which is a nonprofit whose mission is the acquisition and conservation of vulnerable plants of wild and cultivated origin that are, or the cultivated plants that are new to North America. They have made many collecting trips to China, and one to North Vietnam and one to India. In fact, I think that they met on a collecting trip many decades ago. So I will let them take over. And thank you very much for letting me introduce Kelly and Sue.
Thanks. And I want to say one thing before you guys start. If anybody in the audience has a question as Kelly and Sue are talking, you have a little Q&A box down in the bottom of your screen. So just click on that and type your question, and they'll take time towards the end of the presentation and answer it, hopefully answer it. All right, Kelly and Sue, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna share screen here.
thank you, Denise and Fela and Dan. Dan has been, we can't say enough about Dan. He's just been so instrumental in our success as a nursery, and his help in our nonprofit Far Reaches Botanical Conservancy has just been extraordinary. And he's enabled us to do more than we actually imagined. So yay. This trip to northwestern Argentina was one through our Far Reaches Botanical Conservancy, and it wasn't anything that was necessarily on our radar. This was a trip that occurred the first week of March this year, and we were at a Far Reaches board retreat in January, and one of our new board members, Cody Hinchliff, who's a PhD in botany and just a great asset, happened to mention that he was going to Argentina, plant hunting and, doing herbarium specimens. And we went, wow, that sounds great. And he said, you should come. And it's like, okay. So kind of easy as that, actually.
Yeah, and he'd already arranged to have a couple of local guys, one's a botanist and one's a herpetologist, drive us around and guide us. And so it worked out really well. They rented a car that was big enough barely to fit us all. And so we flew into Buenos Aires, which is not down here, obviously. And then we took a short flight to Cordoba, which is right here. And then we went like this all the way around up to about here was the farthest north we were able to get on this particular trip. And it was quite an adventure. We'd never done anything in the Southern Hemisphere before, so it was all new to us, and a lot of mysterious plants, as well as some familiar ones.
So Cody is just a dynamite researcher and technically very savvy, and he had done untold hours of research on this trip that he had planned. So we were able to piggyback on that in the best possible way. And I'm going to talk quite a while because we're having technical issues.
No, there we go.
There we go.
We got it.
And
my clicker wouldn't work for some reason.
And so he had identified just a ton of the plant possibilities there, and geotagged them as to through herbarium specimens that he had found. And we were able to go through a vast list of plant species and identify the key ones that we were most interested to see, the ones that he wanted to see. And we were able to plan our route by being able to find the plants that we wanted most to see and collect, particularly like voucher specimens of.
Yeah, it's really handy when you have a tech guy.
Oh, so great.
Knew how to do all that.
So great.
So, but anyway, here's Buenos Aires, and it was insane. Apparently, all the international flights arrive at the same time.
4:00 in the afternoon, they all come in from all over the world.
So you have to come down the escalator, and then you wrap around the other side of the escalator, and then there's this big long line that goes here. And
this is the line to go into customs. And so here we are in the customs line. This is actually a line, accordioned.
And we should be clear, this was early March, so there was actually almost no, if not probably no cases in Argentina of COVID. It was just starting to ramp up here, so we felt pretty safe going there. And
it seemed like a great idea to go there and get away from here.
Yeah, but it was an insane amount of people in line, and a lot of them were from Europe, and especially we were standing right next to a bunch of Italians. Later on, we realized that, wow, that was probably a pretty risky thing to have.
So we're looking one direction. We're standing in one spot in line. We just looked down. Now we've pivoted, and we're looking at to where we have to go, and that little screen up there is where the customs officials are. So we have to snake back and forth to eventually get there. So we do a 180-degree turn, and now we're looking back the other way. So this is one line. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, there was thousands of people on this line.
So
It took us many hours.
So we figured if we didn't get COVID there, then we're probably pretty safe.
Well, we weren't even thinking about it at the time. Nobody was wearing masks or anything because it wasn't.
It crossed
wasn't
my
there.
mind.
Yeah. So anyway, here we are, and we took a taxi into downtown Buenos Aires to a little Airbnb, and we were hoping for some, different restaurants, but that's what we saw.
Yeah, it's great to get away from what we were familiar with.
Huh. But the next day, we had one day that we could walk around the big city, and it is a huge city. And it happened to be International Women's Day, so the whole city was just teeming with people. Again, a lot of people together in a small space. But it was pretty cool, though.
Yeah, and this was kind of the governmental area, and so a lot of the protests and demonstrations were centered around the center of government there in Buenos Aires. So it was really cool.
And that night, when Cody arrived a little bit later than we did, and actually about 9:30 at night. But everybody eats really late in Argentina, so it was plenty of time to go out to eat at that point. So this is what we did. We went out and had the only vegetables that were on the menu. We learned later that they don't really eat vegetables there.
But we knew they ate barbecue,
Yeah.
and so that's what we got. So
and lots of red wine.
Everybody has their glass of Malbec at the ready here, I'm assuming, watching us. So
yes, there you go. We should have made that a requirement of watching this.
That's right.
Kelly has one going right now. So, okay, now we've made the short hop the next day to Cordoba. And these are our two guides, Saba and Sergio. And they're just really, really nice young guys. But they're absolutely stunned because Cody has brought this giant plant press on the airplane in a big duffel. And they're just kind of like, what are we supposed to do with this? How are we going to fit this in the car?
He also had another duffel full of various other gear too. And so it was and they don't apparently have large cars like big SUV type things or anything like that you can rent. And so they'd rented the biggest car they could find, which was comparatively small storage space.
So you can see the back air, with five of us in the car plus this amount of area, we had a lot of stuff to fit in.
So it was an ongoing negotiation throughout the morning as to what
you can
was
see Cody's trying to get more of his presses in there. But they finally got it all packed, and they were pretty happy about it. It took a while. And so here we are heading out across the countryside. It was about a 6.5-hour drive to our first place that we stayed.
And so this is our first stop. And the reason we stopped here was that this little band of foliage here is one of the top 3 plants on our hit list. We're Polylepis australis. And Polylepis is a genus of plants in the rose family, the Rosaceae. And in 2008, we got a book from England by John Grimshaw and Ross Baton called New Trees in Cultivation. And there's like a page and a half on Polylepis, and there's only one species, this species, Polylepis australis, that's cultivated at all. And that's primarily a few areas in the UK. And their take on it was that this is an incredibly ornamental genus. It's got bark that rivals Acer grisseum, the paper bark maple. And, every effort needs to be made to introduce new species. One of the species grows at higher elevation than any tree in the world at over 15,000 feet. So certainly cold hardiness, drought tolerance, just awesome plant with tons of character. So we wanted to see it, and here it was.
Here they were. So we head off to where they were, and growing at the base was this recognizable fern. A lot of the ferns we saw weren't, but this one is Austroblechnum. So it's related to what we're growing in our garden right now here at Far Reaches. Yeah,
it used to be in the same genus. It used to be Blechnum, but they split off the southern hemisphere's Blechnum into Austroblechnum, as well as several other genera. But yeah, so yes, it was just like such an exciting moment to see this plant in the wild, and here it is just growing out of rock.
Yeah, there they are. They're kind of scrubby looking trees because they're just kind of hanging onto the rock.
But they're an evergreen, which is really nice. And they have that sort of character that a manzanita, large Arctostaphylos shrub would bring to the garden. Just so much character.
It was really fun to see it in the wild. We actually have it at the nursery, this particular species, but we'd never seen it in the wild before. So there's a close-up of the foliage.
Yeah, and this one is distinct. There's another species in Argentina, 3 species. The other one that we didn't see, which we happen to have here at the nursery, is Polylepis tomentella, and it's just got 3 leaflets, and whereas this one has 5 to 7 leaflets. So a bit of a difference.
There's Seba looking up towards one. You can see it's really dry, but they kind of cling to the moisture areas.
And so this is like a shaded overhang underneath a larger Polylepis that was growing above it. And what an interesting little nook that was. It was just replete with crazy little ferns. And just right above that on a drier little flattened outcrop was this one. Cute evergreen fern. The sori just
stood up at attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a beautiful fern. We've found a lot of really cool ferns on our trips to Asia, and but the ferns in South America were just as neat. And
this is just walking back across the dry flat,
yeah.
back to the highway there, and
yeah,
cactus.
Cody's kind of a cactus guy, so he was really excited.
Yeah, he grew up in Southern California, so he just loves the spiny stuff.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting adaptation on some of these little short columnar cactus, is that probably 2/3 of it is actually buried in the soil. And what in addition to the spines and all, and just kind of large cellular structure where it holds on to water to bury itself and protect itself from transpiration and dehydrations. Pretty darn clever.
Yeah. So we got back to the car and we realized that we actually had a fern book with us. Well, the guides did. And there was the fern that we had just seen. So we could actually identify it as Elaphoglossum, which is pretty cool. It's always handy to have field guides along.
Yeah, and even though it's in Spanish, you can kind of figure it out. So
yeah, and Cody did pretty well with Spanish. He spoke reasonable Spanish, and our guides both spoke reasonable English. Kelly and I, not so much.
we can order beer and ask for the check.
Yep. Yeah, there it is again.
Yeah, dead ringer.
Yeah.
So a little further up the highway, we're just on Polylepis alert, and we spot this out in this plain. We're in basically a high, dry, grassy plain, and it's just windswept and just full exposure to the elements. And of all the Polylepis that we saw, they're all in these little niche environments, and this is no exception on these large ones here.
Really a big one. So big that Kelly had to sprawl in front of it just to show off.
And so these massive boulders, they're on top of the ground, and they are conserving water. So the soil underneath and in amongst these huge boulders is considerably more moist than the surrounding grassland area. And so how these little seeds would blow in there and get a purchase. These are wind pollinated plants. And so, but the bark.
Yeah, so this is their best feature. I mean, they've got nice clean foliage and they're evergreen, but this is why you grow Polylepis, because the bark is unbelievable. It's better than Acer griseum, the paper bark maple, in my opinion. It's a beautiful thing.
We've got some great videos of the bark just blowing in the wind, but it just
figured
doesn't.
out how to do videos for Zoom.
Yeah, we haven't seen them translate too well. But here's that little ostroblectum right along the base of the boulder, because it's a water-loving fern, and this is the moistest spot it can go. This thin little margin.
Yeah, you can see the Polylepis is taking advantage of being the shady area too.
Happy, we're happy. I mean, this is just magic. One of the best moments, really.
And a familiar plant to many of you, a little blue-eyed grass or Cicherinchium, just growing there in the duff.
Yeah, Chilense, and this is just basically in here to kind of ground the native plant people a little bit here.
Right. And a senna, which happens to be the name of our dog, but it's a fairly widespread genus.
Kind of one of the dryland legumes. There's senna down in Texas and related states, adjacent states. So it's yeah, and there's Sebastian and Sergio rather. Yeah, he's happy. He's got a lizard.
Yeah, he's the one who's the herpetologist, and he's really good at catching lizards. So he was showing off.
Yeah, and he volunteered. He'd volunteered to drive, but he's got the best hat we've ever seen, really.
Yep, he looked good in it too. It's nice to travel with two good-looking young Argentinian boys.
So you've mentioned to me before.
So it's kind of fun to see what these guys are doing here. They're making an herbarium specimen of the Polylepis that we've just collected a few pieces of. So that's Cody there on the right-hand side, and he and Saba are pressing these, or taping them, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and they each had a different technique, so it was a nice melding of two different techniques,
right.
And they each learned.
Yeah, there was a lot of
learned from the other, so that was really good.
Yeah. There they are.
And Cody had done his PhD work in South America, a good part of it. So this was not unfamiliar territory. He hadn't been in Argentina, but a lot in Bolivia and Venezuela.
And so we're just driving along and continuing on, and we see this strange bunch of ball-like structures there.
All along the power line, everyone, and their twig parrot nests. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Just to see parrots, and we did see parrots as well as seeing their nests.
And this is nearing day's end. This has been a very long day, and this is sun is getting close to setting, and it's like, well, here's the closest large Trichocereus. This may be Trichocereus forbesii, but there's so many of them. And honestly, we're not cactus people, but this is very close to the road. So yeah, we'll scream over and stop and check this out. And it was just awesome.
Kind of awesome to look out over the scene too, as the sun is setting. We realized on this trip that we used every single minute of daylight, and we didn't get back to where we were staying that night until well after dark.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour drive now in the dark to get to where we're staying. So
yeah, but a beautiful sunset.
And some of these, this is the Argentinian equivalent of the saguaro, our native, down in the Southwest. And there's a couple of different species of Trichocereus that look like this. One's a lowland one, one's an upland one. And just great just to see them studded all around the countryside. Moderately high elevation, probably 1,200 meters. So.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
More than that, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the next day. So that's we're seeing right off the bat. So we're kind of in this draw, looking at some really interesting plants.
Well, we're actually not in the draw. We went up this road up to the highest point before we dropped over to this desolate, dry kind of desert. And so we stopped at the highest point. And of course, she always wants to get to the highest high point. And so she's heading up to the top of the little knob, but you can see to the right of her a whole bunch of bromeliads and cactus.
It's bromeliad central here, puyas and dichias and deuterocomias and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I climbed up the top of that little ridge there, and then I actually could get a fairly nice view from the top. So I'm looking at the view, and Cody's obsessed with cactus. So he's down at the base of the ridge there, looking at just all these crazy cactus everywhere. Not very user-friendly.
Oh, but they're beautiful. I mean, the gray, the kind of the ghostly gray long spines on that was just really fine.
They're everywhere.
And one of the puntieds, it's and with a cylindrical cactus kind of leaning out over it there. Just a gorgeous
and another
thing.
One growing with bromeliads.
Yeah.
And some of these bromeliads, I'm not sure this is
think that's
Puya.
might be the Deuteraconia.
Okay, well, anyway, some of them had some seed on them, which was nice. So,
And this is a Talanzia. This is a very tiny little plant. This might be 4 inches across, real small foliage. This is a Talanzia Bryodes. So one of the air plants, essentially.
another one.
Yeah. And this is a Argentinian mesquite, same genus, Prosopis. Don't know the species, haven't tried to figure that out since it wasn't anything we're too interested in, but we're certainly enamored by the armament. Obviously, it's like so many of the plants there, it's evolved to withstand some serious herbivory, and which stands it in good stead in modern times with all the cattle grazing that's going on the open rangeland. So
Yeah, it was land of spiny plants, that's for sure.
Oh man.
Boy. And here's all those Talanzias growing on the wire. So they truly are air plants. They're just a crazy assortment of them growing.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful planting of bromeliads on the telephone lines. And so that was down in a lower valley, and so we've been climbing up into this higher area, and we're about at the kind of the high point, as you can kind of see looking out over the surrounding hills. And so we're checking things out, and this is Glandularia peruviana, and this is in cultivation. It's easy to obtain, actually, and it's strangely hardy to zone 6.
Yeah, which was surprising, but we looked it up after we got home and went, wow, okay. Yeah, it's kind of nice to see a splash of color.
Yeah, in the verbena family, the Verbinaceae,
right.
And its obvious affinities. And this little iris relative in the Iridaceae, this is a Caledoria probably. So
a handsome plant, growing just right along the road.
Yeah, right in the verge, in the kind of the cropped grassland, and this is short little plant to maybe 10 inches or so. And this is a Cestrum parkii, and it's night scented. It's extraordinarily fragrant. And so we had one when we first moved to Port Townsend, and we planted it right outside our bedroom window because we thought that would be good. And that's when we learned that it's not hardy for us here where we're at. I think this would be hardy actually downtown because they're, it's all of 1.5 miles away, but they're a whole zone warmer
But it probably doesn't get enough heat either.
I'm sure you're right.
So maybe it doesn't harden off enough in the fall.
Yeah, I think it's something that they do pretty well with down in Portland area.
Yeah.
Because it loves the heat.
But it is handsome.
Yeah.
It was fun to see it in the wild.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. Cody was really intrigued by this genus in the Loasaceae, Conifer, and he had learned that there were been just a rash of new species being described from this area, so he was really curious to check them out. And it's this kind of vining, sort of weakly scandent sort of plant, but has really gorgeous flowers.
Yeah, there's only one problem with it, though. All parts of the plants are covered in stinging hairs.
And it's not a light sting. It's one that makes you sit up and take notice. It's
kind of like nettle, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can see even the edges of the petals there are hairs, and they're serious business. So.
So the guys have got heavy duty gloves on to press these because Cody insisted on pressing some of these Coniferas, these stinging plants, and so Saba's got his gloves on to do that.
Yeah, and Sergio, the lizard guy, he's turned into a great botanical field assistant. So
yeah, he did great. Plus, he did all of the driving. He was amazing. Oh, just a little scene of a horse.
Yeah, one of the locals just eating all the good stuff.
Right. And so, of course, we were out really late that night too. And so we're driving back to where we were staying that night, and driving in the headlights, we suddenly see this snake crossing the road. So everybody had to jump out and look at that.
And it was pretty speedy. It wasn't a poisonous one, but it was great fun to see it. And so we got, this is a shot in the morning of this place that we stayed at. And it was an old rancho that had been converted to, lodging facilities. But we got there probably 10ish at night. And when we got there, there was
Yeah,
nobody.
this was from the next morning.
Yeah, so there was
Oops.
nobody around, and we were looking through into the windows. It was lit up, and we could look in, and we could see it looked really inviting, and we could see a refrigerator right over there to the right of the fireplace, and we could tell that there was cold beer in it, and we just had to find somebody.
And there wasn't any other town or place to stay anywhere nearby. The next place would have been hours away. So we walked down the road and knocked on the door, and sure enough, the owner lived just a couple houses away, and she came out and opened up for us.
And offered to cook dinner, and so
Yeah.
it was fantastic.
Yeah, that was very lucky.
Yeah.
And there was this toad right by the door, which was interesting.
Yeah, we were actually eating outside in an open but covered kind of veranda, and this guy came hopping by, and Cody will literally pick up anything.
It's kind of a creepy photo.
I know. It's disquieting. It's disquieting. I didn't sleep well that night.
And I had to pose with the two boys because they are good-looking boys, and so,
Sue didn't sleep well that night either.
Yeah, right. So
I know, they're just incredibly good-looking guys. Even as a guy, I can say that. I can recognize that.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, this is day 3.
And so we left that place, and we're driving uphill through this lowland sort of broad valley, which is forested, but there's cactus, columnar trichocereus growing in this forest. Very weird. Come up into this high plateau, like high plains drifter, dry grassland again, and turn the corner. And this is so Argentina because the topography changes so fast. And here is cloud forest, in the lee of this hill in this ravine. And
Yeah, it's
so
pretty crazy, really.
so
It's all these
obviously
little microclimates.
we have to stop.
Yeah, this looks very rich. So we're definitely determined to spend some time here. And then I don't remember who spotted this big cluster of...
Me.
Was it you?
Oh, it might have been.
Could have been. This big cluster of orange fruit. What is that? And then we saw closer up that it was a Bomaria.
And this is in the Alströmeriaceae, so it's related to Alstroemeria, except it's a vining plant, and it can have up to 35 flowers in this umbel, and it's just great. And that vine will snake up maybe 15 feet, and it's just incredible little thing.
We were figuring it was probably Bomaria edulis, though we're not absolutely sure. We do have some seedlings coming along, but we have grown edulis from another collection in the past, and this is the flower on it.
And
it's quite lovely.
Yeah, and edulis, it's named because it has starchy tubers that are edible, and it's hard to know, whether it's naturally occurring there or if it's something that had been transported. Mayan, Aztecs, they all used it, and so it has a huge distribution throughout Mexico, Central America, into South America. It's just a plant of use.
So here we've gone into this little draw here, which, there's a little stream here, and there's stuff on the mossy cliffs, including lots of ferns, some sort of Polypodiaceae, Polypodium type thing.
Yeah, there's a number of different genera in there in Argentina, and we didn't do a press on it or anything. So, but still, really cool. And it's good to see something that's like, well, yeah, that looks like that could be on a big leaf maple. Yeah. And same goes true for the maidenhair, the adiantum.
Yeah, this was Adiantum lawrenceii, so it was a different species, but it looks a lot like ours.
And this is a wackadoodle thing. This is that's a technical term. So this is in the Araceae. It's related to skunk cabbage, that sort of thing. But it's Gorgonidium, and it's got this great foliage that's, it's just an awesome thing. The flowers are a little, they're not going to stop a car, to go out and take a look at it, but still really interesting.
Yeah, there's the seeds nestled in there.
And admittedly, we didn't see it when that spathe, the showy part of the flower, was in its prime. This is just kind of the withered remnant. But and from there we, what a segue. From there, so from there we drove on, turned the corner, hit dry grassland again, dropped down into a valley to a town and stopped at a grocery store to get lunch. And this was on the window.
On the window, we're like, that seems a little alarming, but that's all we saw of it, fortunately.
And so then we kind of drive up the other side of the hill from the town, and we're in cloud forest again. And this time it's just big cloud forest, and it's just incredible. And
so there's all these epiphytes growing on the tree trunks, which is really cool.
Yeah, it really did remind us of Asia. And this is Seba just walking down the road, and it's just a jungle. It's quite impenetrable, actually. A lot of bamboo, a lot of just spiny grabbing lianas that'll just impossible to get through. And
more really great ferns.
And we're really smitten by ferns that don't look like ferns, and especially like the entire sort of tongue-leafed ferns. We do love those.
And a begonia, something familiar.
Yeah. And we saw this or a similar species. This is one of the kind of the tuberous types. And it's pretty interesting. Fun to see.
This was quite beautiful. This was some sort of a gentianella or something in the gentian family, probably a gentianella, with these beautiful tubular, bright red flowers. Really a gorgeous thing. Yeah,
and gentianellas, that's awesome. Gentianellas are something too that there's just been, just tons of new species of gentians and gentianellas being described in South America and Argentina in particular.
And you can just see these epiphytes. This is a crazy strap leaf fern.
Yeah, it's just you'd think it was grass growing on there, but it's this really cool fern, and it's open rangeland again. Everything's grazed. The damn cows eat everything, and then later that night we would eat the damn cows. So it kind of worked out. It was that circular thing that keeps everything in harmony.
Yeah. So this is probably a Camploneuron. That I don't know what species, but this fern. But anyway, it was beautiful. And there's something very similar that we've seen in Asia as well. Yeah,
you would not. You'd be hard pressed.
Think we were in Asia.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed.
The cows and everything.
Exactly. The yaks.
Yeah. Right.
And so one of the other plant. This was one of the top two plants that we wanted to see. Crinodendron tucumanum. We wanted to see that bad. We grow two species of Crinodendron here. Sometimes they call them like lantern trees, or Crinodendron hookerianum from Chile is just gorgeous with these red flowers. Crinodendron patagua from Chile has got white flowers. This is very close to that in appearance, but it's not in cultivation. Nobody's really seen it. You can't find really any references to it. And so we wanted to see it, and we can see why nobody's seen it, because it's kind of not really in your face.
No, we didn't even notice that was what that was until we really.
But we knew what we were looking for, so it's like, that is just nondescript enough. That could be Crinodendron tucumanum,
right?
And it was up on top of this a little.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to shimmy out there to see if there was any seed. And fortunately, we found a big one later that had seed on it.
But there's Sue scrambling.
So I'm scrambling back down after doing that. Yeah, it was a little tricky. It was kind of loose gravel. And
Crinodendron's in the Elaeocarpaceae, which is a big sort of subtropical genus that's really common in Asia as well. And just you can kind of see the winding path on the road, the turns that we're making going up, and there's a Seba down there scouting on ahead, or scouting below us, I guess. But one of the other plants that we're just keen on seeing that's supposed to be kind of a striking dominant part of this forest situation is Podocarpus Parlatory.
And it was beautiful.
Old growth, to see old growth, you know,
Mhm.
that was awesome. And, you know, typical conifer with the long, graceful needles on it. And this
big old trees.
little grove of them on top of this little knoll was just incredible. That was a magic moment.
It certainly was. And it was sporting lots of ferns on its trunks too.
Yeah, it has a good kind of a little bit of a rough bark and, you know, good foothold. And the bark, this is the lower trunk, and the bark was attractive.
Yes, it was. Yeah, you can see how big it is. We're standing at the base of it here. And there's Kelly with Cody.
Yeah, I'm just so happy.
And then we realized that, oh, good, there's a big Crinodendron just down the road. So we stopped to look at that.
And this had so many trunks to it. It was just a massive, massive old plant. And it was just like a little shop of horrors almost of epiphytes. You know, I mean, you could have just spent the entire day just cataloging epiphytes that were growing on this thing. But man, it was awesome. There's the foliage on it.
Yeah, and here's some seed pods.
Oh, yeah.
Which is always good. There they are. They're a bit green, but we did manage to get some good seed. And then there were a few remnant flowers. It's not as showy as Hookerianum for sure, but it looks very similar to the other species we grow.
Yeah, and that was one of the nice thing was that we were able to have arranged for collecting permits for both the voucher specimens and seed, and that was awesome. We also had well, anyway, I'm running out of time.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay.
And so here, winding away from the cloud forest.
Yeah, so we're heading down now,
Yeah, we're back out into the dry.
So you can drop down within 40 kilometers. You can go from desert, dry desert and cactus to a cloud forest,
and then back to dry desert again,
and then back up to like high step conditions.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is a strange ecosystem.
Northwest Argentina is known for having like perhaps the most severe weather in the world. You get these sweeping moisture-laden conditions coming in from the Atlantic, hitting or slamming into the Andes. Stuff coming down from Bolivia, stuff coming up from the south, and it's just like crazy rain, crazy huge hailstorms, wind. It's just nuts, and it just comes on so fast.
Fortunately, we didn't have to be out in one of those. I don't think it was quite the time of year that a lot of them happen, but anyway, here we are looking at some dryland stuff up high. We're pretty up high right here.
Yeah, and we're seeing some really cool things. This is a plant that we've wanted to see for many, many years. We've seen it featured in like the Alpine Garden Society Bulletin, the North American Rock Garden Society Bulletin, the Scottish Rock Garden Journal of expeditions or botanical tours to the Andes, and they're always taking pictures of this little Fabaceae. Adesmia is the genus.
It's very handsome with that beautiful silvery foliage, though very spiny like everything else.
But how cool! What a great rock garden plant!
And another gentianella, just like a little ground cover one. Lovely little thing.
Some of the gentianellas are annual, some are perennial. But we're trying to get our way down into the ravine. You know, we're always trying to find the moistest spot in the dry setting, and I guess in wet settings we're always looking for the dry spot. So
we're just never happy. But anyway, This is another one of those Chiophorus that we saw the orange flowered one early on with the stinging hairs, and this is a white flowered version of it.
Yeah, that might be Conifer or Molly.
Or clavata, maybe anyway. And then this was probably the plant of the day for sure.
Yeah.
This was Chicaragua, which is what family? I'm not sure.
Well, that's good. It's in the Asteraceae, I think, but it's related to Muticia, which is a kind of a vining, climbing sort of Asteraceae thing. It's a weirdo. I mean, to our eyes, it looked reminiscent of like the South African proteas, You know, it's got this kind of dry, papery flower, and the color was so
Yeah, it
great.
was beautiful.
Oh, God, that's a great plant. And this is, this is in a tough, windswept, cold situation. This would be a great plant for here.
Yeah, really
Oh,
handsome.
man. um,
Okay, this is and then so we're kind of heading into where we spent the night, and we stopped by this area that was a shrine.
well, we didn't actually know it was a shrine. We just,
Yeah.
we saw these, Cody saw these bromeliads
Yeah,
out
he
his
said,
side of the car.
"Stop!"
Oh,
Yeah, just big clumps of them.
and we've been driving through this big broad plain that's either just a scrub or
Or vineyards.
or olives,
Yeah, or olives.
and mountains rising on both sides up to like 12,000 feet where we're going to go the following day.
Not the following day, 2 days.
2 days hence, with the dream of seeing rosulate violets. Oh my God.
Andean condors.
Andean condors.
Anyway, so here, but we've got a little bit of seed on here, and they're just beautiful big clumps. There's
Flowers are to my mind, they're kind of infinitely forgettable.
Cody's happy though; he really loves these guys.
So Cody, I admire his plant collecting footwear, these little flip flops in
Yeah, with all this
spiny
spiny
country,
stuff.
and he's climbing up these rocky
Right.
faces and cactus and sawtooth bromeliads, and somehow he comes out of it unscathed.
Yeah.
So if you were to make a horticultural selection of one of these bromeliads, this would have been the one.
Yeah, that was really a handsome
Just
thing.
a basketball sitting there.
So we were like, "Well, looks like this kind of a shrine here." It was painted on this rock, and then Kelly's been trying to figure out who this guy was, Pedro Camacho.
So
you can't quite figure out.
Yeah, so he's an author who's one Pedro Camacho. I mean, there's a gazillion of
So
them.
he looks like a gaucho on a horse.
At first, I thought, well, it's this really hot Zumba instructor,
because that's what he found on the internet.
And then delving a little bit deeper, there's another Pedro Camacho who's an author and who's also written composer for various video games. That could be.
Who knows?
Who
but anyway,
knows?
whoever this is,
Saint Pedro. There's a shrine to Saint Pedro.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're heading back down the road. Here's a bunch of, I think this is all vineyards.
Yeah, that's all vineyards. So
we're that great Malbec.
Yeah, so we're getting close to town, and we need to find a room because we're on our way to another area that we're going to go look for plants in and then come back to this town for the night. So we got to get a place and as quick as we can. So we just stopped at the first place we saw and booked a room.
Kind of splurged. It was a really nice place.
It was kind of nice.
Yeah, it was a nice change.
It was really nice.
And then driving along with just some of this beautiful just the geology was incredible.
Oh yeah, we drove for an hour through this crazy geology, and you can just kind of see the intense rains they get. It just looks like the hills and everything are just weathered by these sudden downpours. And you can see in the front, this is like a flash flood plain, and they have just damaging flash floods.
Well, you can see that there's been a lot of rain moving through here. Not right now, though. We had really good weather. We were lucky.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, just amazing rock outcrops.
And so we finally so we finally get off the paved road, and we're onto this dirt road, and it's like, no, just keep going. And so it wasn't too far past this. This is one of the highlights of the trip too, as we were driving along and we spotted a toucan flying and just landed in a tree. So we all just stopped and watched that as it just flew casually from tree to tree. I'd never seen one in the wild before, so that was super exciting for me.
And cowboys.
I know you like cowboys. and so Cody actually knew exactly where this particular plant was because he had seen it on Street View Google Earth.
This was our other target plant.
And this is another polylepis. This is Polylepis hieronymi. and
Hieronymi.
Hieronymi. And this, this is another thing that's not in cultivation.
Yeah, this Polylepis isn't in cultivation anywhere. I don't think.
And it's a gorgeous thing, and it's got a pretty restricted distribution. It's just amazing.
It looks like it's in the same section as one that we do grow, which is Polylepis lanata, because they have that kind of fuzzy foliage.
Yeah, a lot of hairs on the stems, a lot of hairs on the underside of the leaves, a lot of tomentum, indumentum.
Yeah, you can see we're pretty happy.
Oh
here.
man, this is one of the best moments ever. I mean, I've never imagined that we would actually be able to find this thing.
Yeah,
And so we
it's just growing throughout
continued
this-
on up the road, and
Yeah, it's all through these kind of rock outcrops, just growing kind of in
directly
protected spots.
Yeah, directly in the rock. In the rock. This is a huge just rock flow,
Yeah.
and any little crack. I mean, the seed falls in and it starts to go. And it was really gratifying to see that there were young ones coming on. Not a ton, because the chances of finding a foothold are really slim. It's harsh.
It's heavily grazed there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see this is in a pretty deep kind of a crevice there that it's growing.
And Sue's got the binoculars out. She's just looking for
I'm looking for seed.
looking for flowers, looking for anything. So in the rose family, this is in the rose family. So when we were kind of and so when ours first bloomed, our first Polylepis flowered here, I was like, what the hell? And I went back to the book and I looked up the botanical description, and it said flowers apetalous. It's like, great, no petals.
Yeah, so it's a rose that doesn't have showy flowers, which is really unfortunate. This is actually one of ours growing here at the nursery, the flowers.
Yeah, that's Polylepis tomentella, the other Argentinian species with just the trifoliate leaflets. So it's just it's just beautiful dangling calyces and business parts.
So it's a good thing it has that beautiful bark and beautiful foliage. But boy, the caterpillars sure like it. It's just really odd.
That's a little like a
no, they weren't.
little
They were
grasshopper
caterpillars,
sort of
kind of
thing.
locusty things. Yeah,
Yeah, we only saw that really on one plant, so that was good.
fortunately.
And most of the plants pretty much all the plants looked in pretty good shape. This was one that was on its way out, but it's
old plant.
Yeah, an old plant. I think it's just kind of maybe outgrew its kind of nutritional base there, its root room.
Yeah.
But some of the young plants, would have this great silver foliage, just lovely thing. Cannot get enough of that.
And a really old plant here. This is the trunk coming out here. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and so it's in the botanical literature, it's described as a shrub, and well, actually, given time and the correct space, it's a tree.
Yeah, that's
maybe
amazing.
not a real vertical tree, but a tree nonetheless. And
yeah, it's a pretty crazy trunk.
and this is an area that just felt magical. I mean, this is an area that had been used in pre-Columbian times. We found rock shelters with corn pounding holes in it, and it was just amazing.
And another cool nest hanging from it. Yeah, there's one kind of hanging out over the abyss here.
Oh, so great. I don't know. There's something about it that
Yeah,
just
you can see it's got this
grabs
really,
me. Yeah, all that hair to keep the wind transpiration down, to refract sunlight, to keep those tissues from drying out. And
Obviously, we like this plant, so we have a lot of pictures
man,
of
it
it.
probably also keeps insects and things from chomping on it too. Just one of the best pictures ever.
Okay, so that's the end of our day.
And so we stayed there till like the sun was setting, and then we're heading back to that hotel that we had booked.
And this is kind of a strange, we're wrapping it up here pretty soon here. It was kind of a strange end to the day, and this is an odd picture, but our guides pulled over when we got back down to the main road, and they had just gotten the internet back, and then they'd heard that COVID was really on the increase all of a sudden in Argentina, and that the government had decided that all tourists had to go immediately into quarantine
For 14 days.
for 14 days. And so our guides were just stopping to tell us that our trip was over, basically, which was really a bummer because we were supposed to go up into the high area the next day. And it was supposed to be about 10 days, and it turned out to be 3.5 days in the field. But what was very lucky was that they were willing to take us back to Cordoba and get us on an airplane rather than turning us over to the authorities.
So what was happening was that the government was apparently going from hotel to hotel, checking for tourists, and then putting them into a 14-day quarantine. Well, yeah, that's fine, but international flights out of Argentina were ending in 2 days.
Right.
So,
And we were really lucky that Sergio and Saba were willing to do this because they were actually not supposed to have us any longer. They were supposed to turn us over immediately. So they were risking their reputation.
but they couldn't see how that made sense. That's like, well, wouldn't you want these people to get out of here? You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's Sue and Cody, and they are.
And we're trying to find plane tickets.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're going, God, we're not gonna get a flight out, you know.
Yeah.
Can we go to Chile? Can we go to Bolivia? Can we go to Ecuador? You know, drive there and get out from there. But we check.
But
You're checking that.
It was on
it's just
the
as
increase
bad.
everywhere else. So
The
we
whole thing was
managed to
coming
find
crashing down.
actual flights out of Cordoba, international flight out of Cordoba. We didn't even have to go all the way to Buenos Aires. So, and we ended up getting the last flight out of Cordoba, but we had to get to Cordoba, which was about a 12-hour drive. And the guys said, "Yeah, we'll just drive there. We'll just drive straight there and get you guys there." They were really willing to do that. So here they are driving this very long, grueling day.
And so this is all big highway that we're driving on. But on this highway, there are periodic police checkpoints, and so our guys would go, "Okay, pull over here," and so they go taking side routes through little towns. At one point, we're driving through sugar cane fields, and then just pop up on the shoulder of the highway and keep going. And
Yeah, it was. We were kind of humming the tune to Mission Impossible the whole time we were doing it. It was pretty crazy.
And so we told him, we said, "Yeah, just get us to Cordoba. We'll just get a hotel. We'll find our way to the airport." And he says, "No, you won't. You can't." So he says, "You'll stay with me." And
so we had to stay in Sergio's really tiny little apartment, but he was very generous to just let us camp out there. And of course, what they did, what all good Argentine guys do, they made us barbecue that night.
He'd called ahead to his brother and had him get plenty of beer, plenty of wine, and plenty of meat.
Yeah. So there we are feasting away on. There was no vegetables other than some potatoes.
No, those were vegetables.
Yeah, well, they call those vegetables. That's right.
And so we said, so they asked us, so how much proportion meat do you have in America? What do you figure? And we said, half a pound at the most. And he says, here, a pound at the least per person.
Yeah.
So
It's not a place to be a vegetarian, that's for sure. But we were just really fortunate that they let us stay at their place, and then they took us to the airport the next morning, and we managed to get on the plane and get home. And now Argentina is actually the worst country in South America. So
well, we had a lot of work to do because here's all these herbarium specimens. Even though we'd only been out in the field that short amount of time, that there's a lot of herbarium sheets, and Cody had planned on having ample time at the end to go through and get them all cataloged, entered into the computer, labeled correctly. And so he
stayed up the entire night and did it.
The entire night, well over 100 specimens that he logged.
And I think we stayed up till about 2 or 3.
Yeah,
just
we
trying to
did.
get our seeds organized and everything.
Yeah. And so Cody finished at 6:30 in the morning, and we had to get in the car at 7 to go to the airport. So he barely had time to shove everything together, take a quick shower, and get in the car wet. So it was a lot of fun.
All right, so we're going to end on a familiar landscape to some. This is because of COVID, we haven't been able to travel. In fact, we would normally be in China right now, but we've been hiking a lot in our own mountains, and we were really excited to see this plant here this summer in bloom.
This was a new one to us. We hadn't seen that in the Olympics before, so this was the high point of our summer.
And this is Sabellina basaltica, which is just
used to be Arenaria racii.
Right. So it was just described not that long ago. I think what 2015 or something.
17. Yeah,
17.
I think so.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the last slide.
And
And-
it was fun to see it right where Nelsa Buckingham had done a herbarium voucher of it too. So that back in 75. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah. So I guess I should stop share. And maybe I'll start our video. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.
I'm muted. So there's some questions in the Q&A. Sue and Kelly, do you want me to read them to you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Jennifer has several questions. She said, what is the name of the old growth conifer seen in the rainforest again?
Podocarpus Parlatory.
All right, you get that,
Podocarpus.
Jennifer?
Hmm.
How many species were you able to bring back to the US? Anything you had to leave behind?
We did leave quite a bit behind. So we weren't able to get all the permitting like for like plant specimens and things. So we just brought back a few seeds. So it wasn't
Basically under the small lots of seed program. So we do have some seedlings coming along, but not, yeah, it was such the whole trip got cut very short.
But we feel really good,
Yeah.
about all the herbarium work, because part of it is, we're of the 100 and some different specimens, those are multiple sheets of each one. And so some copies are being deposited at the Argentinian universities, and other copies are at some point going to be sent up here to the US, and then they can be distributed either maybe with David Giblin at the Burke, or
Right.
onto the
Yeah,
Smithsonian or
we
something.
are doing that. We are working with David on some of our specimens that we've collected on different trips, actually. So yeah, Cody's been pressing stuff for us. So that's exciting.
Yeah. And Jennifer has one more question. What criteria makes a plant one of your target species?
Well, nobody having it is always a good one. So what criteria? It has to be ideally beautiful, but mostly it's interesting. It's
and rare.
And rare. That's a hard question, actually. So it's a combination of horticultural interest, botanical interest, our own personal biases. I think the fact that a lot of times that it's
Not in
seldom or
cultivation.
never been introduced.
And it might be something that, that possibly is threatened. I mean, we don't collect anything that's so rare that we would be damaging the population, but
or plants that are under a CITES
right.
prohibition or something.
Right.
And kind of the real bummer is that we had actually permits to collect in the national parks too, which we weren't able to utilize because of time restrictions. But that would have been
that was going to be the
that
next
would have
day
been
up into
super
the
awesome.
national park area. That would have been great. Maybe again someday we'll go.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
Someday we're all going to have our interrupted COVID trip stories.
Right, that's right.
Oh man.
There's one last, it's actually a comment here from Sharon Baker saying, Pedro Camacho is the scriptwriter in Vargas Llosa's Aunt Julia and the scriptwriter. I'm not sure, maybe for something else.
Yeah, he's done
that
a
was one possibility we saw.
Yeah, one of his either scripts or books that we saw had a figure on horseback, so on the cover. So
yeah, we were guessing that was the most likely, but there are several Pedro Camachos when you look it up, so who knows for sure.
I don't know. I kind of like the Zumba instructor.
Okay, is that it?
Well, yeah. Any other questions? That's all I see here.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you so much. Both Sue and Kelly have been such great supporters of the Native Plant Society. You always bring plants to give out in our raffles, which we can't really do online here. But I was really excited to have you talk and hear about your travels. So thank
Well,
you.
thanks. Well, it's been
Yeah.
fun because even though we can't travel abroad, we've been doing a lot of hiking in the Olympics. So we've been really getting to know our own flora better and
Mhm.
having a great time doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's been such an unexpected bonus to the pandemic.
The dogs like it too. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming.
All right.
Oh, there's one more question.
Sure.
Oh, no, these are just comments. Thank you both for sharing your photos and stories. And this was a beautiful and inspiring presentation. So pleased you're familiar with Nelson's collections too. That's from Diane Doss. Thank you
Well, thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
for
that means a
coming,
lot.
Diane.
All right. Well, thank you very much,
Okay.
everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Denise, I'm closing out.